His Excellency, Ambassador Mohammad Koba, Chargé d'Affaires, Permanent Mission of the Republic of Indonesia to the United Nations, and co-chairman of this year's STI Forum, to deliver the opening remarks. Ambassador Koba, we're so honored to have you. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Excellencies, distinguished delegates and participants, it is my great honor to welcome all of you and thank you for joining us at this very important side event regarding the implementation of the Secretary General's roadmap on digital cooperation. Excuse me. Over the course of last year, we have witnessed the good and the not so good effects that accompany digital technology. Digital technology is indeed a double-edged sword that has come to be seen as necessity, but easy to overlook its risk. Despite the magnitude of digital technology's impact globally, the problem is that not all countries and people have equal access, which leaves them behind. There is no time like now to harness the power of digital technology for good. Digital technology and internet have the potential to bring us together and uplift humanity and to help achieve the SDGs as well as leave no one behind. The global recovery from COVID-19 makes addressing digital issues even more urgent. I don't think there is an exaggeration to expect the post-COVID-19 world to be more digital than ever before. The launch of the roadmap on digital cooperation by the Secretary General in 2020 is the UN's vision of a more inclusive, open, and safe digital world. It calls us to scale up successful efforts and broaden partnership. It also lays out concrete and action-oriented steps in key areas such as achieving universal connectivity by 2030. All of these are very important in ensuring that everyone can benefit fully from digital technologies while still staying safe and secure in the new digital world. Distinguished delegates and participants, there is much that the STI Forum is doing that is aligned with these objectives. The crux of the roadmap, the question on how we can better harness the benefits of technology while addressing its challenges, also underpins much of the discussions around science and technology, and thus the need for innovation. In the area of digital technology, this call for global discussion and global digital cooperation is even more urgent in order to narrow the digital gaps, as the President of the General Assembly underscored last week at the high-level thematic debate. In particular, if digital cooperation cannot keep pace with the accelerating shift towards a digital world, we risk an even greater digital divide between developed and developing countries, and even within countries where already vulnerable and marginalized groups are left behind. As we emerge from the crisis, there is need to be a global collective responsibility to rebuild economies and societies on a safer and more equitable technological foundation. Indonesia is doing its part by enhancing its digital economy, promoting the creative economy, particularly by empowering women and youth, as well as MSMEs using digital technology. Excellencies, distinguished participants, our discussion and work on this issue are very important, and I look forward to future STI forums reserving an important space for the SecGen's roadmap. Efforts to implement it through multi-stakeholder partnership will support the international community and all countries to better achieve digital transformation and realize a brighter digital future. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Ambassador Koba, thank you so much for reminding us of the crucial need to narrow digital divides because of the uplifting power of digital technologies. We now move to our distinguished panel, and we've been so honored to have them here with us today to engage with the various participants who are joining us not just via the WebEx, but also listening in via UN Web TV. I first begin with Ms. Maria-Francesca Spatolisano, who is the Assistant Secretary General of DESERB and the Officer in Charge of the Office of the Envoy on Technology. And Excellency, Assistant Secretary General, please.
Thank you very much. Excellencies and dear colleagues, thank you for joining the office of the Tech Envoy today. And in particular, I would like to thank Ambassador Koba and my distinguished co-panelists for accepting our invitation to speak. Today, we want to give enough time to as many speakers as possible, so I'll make just 3 brief remarks. First, we have made good progress in implementing the Secretary General's roadmap, thanks, in fact, to many of you who are present here today, but there is still much to be done. And from last week's high-level thematic debate on digital cooperation and connectivity convened by the PGA, there is a clear momentum that we need to seize. COVID has brought awareness of the importance of digital, as Ambassador Koba was saying, and so there is a new urgency to issue the issues like universal connectivity, promoting digital inclusion, upscaling global digital capacity building, and narrowing the digital divide. For many of you, this is very much long overdue work. But let me say, I think that the important work we've been doing together for a number of years now is bearing fruit. The second point I want to make is linked to the previous one, and it is that indeed we are at the inflection point where is the moment to act. And here I call on the co-champions and all the participants of the various roundtables and work streams to continue your important work, but with a focus on finding real world and concrete outcomes in line with the roadmap's practical and impact-oriented approach. As you may have read in the update note that the Tech Envoy office circulated recently, some of these outcomes will come on stream in the coming months, like frameworks and indicators for connectivity and inclusion, global capacity building platforms, and others. I am particularly grateful here to those UN agencies such as ITU, UNDP, and UNICEF that have been redoubling their efforts in supporting digital actions and the Secretary General's roadmap. And I am also very grateful for the new partnerships that we have recently been seeing taking shape. For instance, the new coalition CODES on digital and the environment. And my third and last point is that it remains the foundation of the roadmap work and of the office of the Tech Envoy, that we will strive to be as inclusive and multi-stakeholders as possible. The roadmap, and indeed the Tech Envoy office, is relatively young, so we ask for your support, patience even, and encouragement as we find our feet one step at a time. Ultimately, we are working together towards a roadmap vision for a more open, free, and secure digital future for all. In some ways, this work is rather new here at the UN. The issues we work on and the ways in which we are striving to work. So it may take time for both the more traditional UN community and the tech world to learn each other's ways. But together we will get there. I thank you very much.
ASG, thank you so much. We now turn to Mr. Vint Cerf that we are so honored to have with us today, one of the fathers of the internet, Vice President and Chief Internet Evangelist at Google. He was also previously a member of the Secretary General's high-level panel on digital cooperation. From your perspective, Vint, having seen it all right from the beginning until now, what do you think of the UN's work on digital cooperation and the roadmap?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for allowing me to participate in this call. It is so timely to be focusing on the digital cooperation roadmap and the initiative that the Secretary General launched several years ago. I can tell you that Google is completely committed to working with a number of international organizations in order to make concrete progress along the lines that the first two speakers have already alluded to. We are very interested in collaborating on research and development, on collaborating on applications and implementation of technologies that will essentially go after the SDG initiatives, for example, to deal with the sustainability of our environment, to say nothing of being able to share technical solutions to the problems that arise when we deal with global communication systems like the internet. So we are very interested in solving very concrete problems. I like very much what was said earlier about finding concrete outcomes that are demonstrably useful for everyone, ranging from artificial intelligence applications and machine learning to using public key crypto, for example, for digital signatures and for protection and authentication of identity, the ability to execute contracts and things of that kind. We're very interested in working with multi-stakeholder organizations, of which there are many, the Internet Governance Forum being an obvious one, the World Summit on the Information Society, working with other digital standards groups, ITU, the IETF. We are, I think, completely committed to this two-way opportunity for organizations in the public sector and in the private sector to make progress together. In this digital environment, the opportunities are very significant, and we recognize the great gaps that there are between parties who have access to these technologies and those who are yet to be connected. It seems to me that we have in the next several years an opportunity to create a much more uniform environment for everyone. We hope it will be safe, secure, private, accessible, affordable, resilient, reliable, and also inclusive.
Thank you so much, Vint. And really that list of what we need to achieve really points to the scale of the work ahead of us. And on that, let me turn now to Ms. Nnenna Nwakanma, who is the Director and Chief Web Advocate of the Web Foundation. And Nnenna really has been a force galvanizing a lot of this growing civil society activity around digital cooperation at the United Nations. How do you see the digital cooperation roadmap from your perspective, Nnenna?
Everyone, Your Excellencies, SG Spatolisano, thank you very much for having me. Good afternoon from Abidjan in West Africa. I'd like to reflect on a few things. First of all, from the World Wide Web Foundation, our engagement didn't start from the roadmap. We started before the ancestors of the roadmap. Where we even started before the high-level panel. That's how old we are. I am very glad that we've come so far. When I observe things, I see that the Office of the UN Tech Envoy is up. Congratulations. I see that the work on the pillars, some pillars have started. And I want to congratulate us because we are part of those pushing the pillar on global connectivity. I think that has moved forward, and a whole lot of others. I'm also happy that a CSO coalition of over 90 entities is up. Thank you to all those who've collaborated with the UN and with us as civil society. Now, I think that for my 3 minutes, I'd like to talk about the challenges that we see so far. One of the challenges is the ambassador, you might want to relay this, is the UN being the UN of member states. And I think the reason why we are here, maybe Vint and myself, is to say that there needs to be a change, a shift in paradigm. So Vint is from generation 1.0, I'm from generation 2.0. But the internet and digital world is a world of co-creation. It's a permissionless place. We don't do excellencies, all of that. We do come in, bring in your expertise and help build. So I think that one of the challenges is to have a change in the way we do think things. And I think we've done well with adapting to COVID-19, and the UN is doing its best. Otherwise, these meetings would have been having them in person in New York. But you've come a long way, and I want to say, there isn't a better time to have digital cooperation but now. One other thing I want to raise an alarm for all of us here is that we are slightly sliding into the English-only environment with the digital cooperation, and we need to watch it. I know it is easy. I know it is our comfort zone, mais ce n'est pas très bien. It is not the very best. So we must watch, we must keep watch as we work together in the key, the victories we've won already as civil society, so that we don't lose those. I want to end on 2 points. One is to say that the civil society capacity to engage in something like the digital cooperation is very rare. You wouldn't have many Nnennas because most of the funding we run with are tied to activities and not to meetings. They are tied to tangible products and not to reflections. They are tied to projects and not to processes. And so when we want to build more civil society engagement, it means that we need core funding to these civil society organizations to help them engage in a durable, sustainable manner. I want to end this reflection with a quote from Nelson Mandela, who I think we all know. And that is my personal submission. I, Nnenna, from the Web Foundation, I think I've done my part. And I'm hoping that I will help raise many others. Just in case you don't see me tomorrow, Mandela says, when a man, and for this case, a woman, has done what she considers to be her duty to her people, the internet people, and her country to the digital world, she can rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Nnenna. You are an inspiration to us all. And our next speaker is Ms. Doreen Bogdan-Martin, Director of the Telecommunication Development Bureau at the International Telecommunication Union, the ITU, also another inspiration to us all. Really as a champion for digital policy in the UN space and the work that we are doing. Doreen, please.
Thank you so much, Yuping. It's really great to be here. And it's also terrific that today's event follows the high-level debate last week of the PGA on digital cooperation and connectivity. And as Vint said, it couldn't be more timely. Of course, the publication of the roadmap for digital cooperation last June came at that critical inflection point, as the ASG mentioned before, with COVID accelerating digitization and also magnifying both the opportunities and the challenges related to digital technology. It brought to the fore our rapidly growing digital dependence, I would say, and also the urgency to come together around digital issues. And most importantly, the implications for those that were digitally excluded. And we know that that exacerbated global inequalities for those 3.7 billion. We saw last year, and we continue to see today, that changing this picture is going to require concerted efforts on many, many fronts. And it's not just about infrastructure or devices. It's about the right policy and regulatory frameworks. It's about efforts to bring costs down. It's about promoting digital literacy, locally developed content in appropriate languages, as our colleague just mentioned before, so that the power of new technologies becomes accessible to and actionable by the digitally disenfranchised. I want to very quickly highlight a couple of the key activities that are now underway to support the roadmap. On the connectivity front, as co-champions of the recommendation on global connectivity, ITU and UNICEF are working on that baseline that the ASG mentioned, that baseline framework for universal, affordable, and meaningful digital connectivity, working with the Tech Envoy's office, and we're hoping that that analysis will be ready in the next couple of weeks. On the crisis and humanitarian operations side, we're working with the World Food Program, with UNHCR, with GSMA, to promote coordination and scalability in emergency telecommunications in response to the roadmap's call to ensure connectivity in times of crisis. Of course, on the Giga School connectivity front, lots of progress there. We heard about that last week at the PGA event. We've got some 900,000 schools that we've mapped. We're signed in with 19 countries, which is really excited. And we're looking at that financing piece, that global financing instrument for school connectivity as well as country-level capital market products, and we'll keep you posted on the Giga Bond as it evolves. Also on the financing platform piece that was called for in the roadmap to bring investors together, that was supported also by the Broadband Commission's manifesto that called for this new platform to support public-private financing of universal broadband through innovative hybrid investment models. And I'm hoping that that will be a key outcome in our upcoming World Telecommunications Development Conference of the ITU. The second piece that I wanted to update you on is the capacity building piece that we're co-leading with UNDP. That's a truly multi-stakeholder effort, and we're going to be shortly publishing our snapshot of the digital capacity development supplier landscape. Thanks everyone for your contributions. We're also advancing on this multi-stakeholder network on digital capacity development, which is also super exciting. And we will soon have our new UNDP ITU joint facility. That facility will strengthen digital capacity on both local and international levels, with UNDP bringing the strategic insight and the local ecosystem's demand and dynamics, as well as operational support on the ground, and ITU bringing its expertise in supporting countries in their digital transition and strengthening their digital capacities. That piece, I also think it's important to mention, it's closely aligned with the country teams. So we're working with the RCs and of course, linking up to the interagency roadmap response teams that are coordinated by UNDCO. I did also want to highlight, we're super excited, as the ASG mentioned, about this coalition for the digital environment sustainability, that CODAS piece. ITU looks forward to supporting that piece. And finally, Yuping, on the challenges, and I apologize for being long, just to say simply that the roadmap's there, it provides great guidance, but we're not done. I just want to stress that. We've got lots to do. And so to close, I want to reiterate a point that Vint made when we had our recent podcast that aired yesterday, which is that inclusive open partnerships that leverage the unique strengths of each player are what are going to help us translate our roadmap into concrete achievements by our target date of 2030. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Doreen. We're now turning to the part of the program where we really like to hear from the participants and those listening in, and many of our stakeholders and those who have been working so closely with the Office of the Tech Envoy, the champions in this process of implementing the roadmap. So this is our chance to hear from you and for you to also engage with the panelists that we've assembled today. We're going to go in order of the speakers that inscribed with us ahead of time, but if you'd like to speak as well, we'll do our best to try and squeeze you in. So if you could just chat us and let us know. Our first speaker is Ambassador Mark Zellenvrad, who's the Chargé d'Affaires of the Netherlands mission here at the United Nations. Ambassador, please, you have the floor.
Thanks, Yuping, and thank you for that wonderfully energetic way in which you are guiding this whole debate. Fantastic, thank you. And a great shout out to the panelists. What a fantastic panel. And I think especially Mr. Nwakanma, you really spoke to my heart. What a fantastic intervention. And the thing that stuck with me was paradigm change. And you are so correct. And let me make it a little bit personal, because today is 4 May, which is a very personal day for many Dutch people, because this is the day that we commemorate our dead from the Second World War. And it's a day that always, to me personally, very much brings in focus this work that we do here at the United Nations, which is an organization that rose from the ashes of that war. And now flash forward 75 years later. And I think, you know, for all its flaws, this organization, when it's celebrated 75 years, has done as well as it could. But it is, of course, still a uniquely interstate organization based on the foundations of 75 years ago. And I think if one thing stuck out for UN at 75, it was how we should diversify. And in this time, the 75 years since that horrible event of the Second World War, we saw the creation of a basically parallel world, a virtual world, an internet world, in which the rules do not apply that we have gotten to know and to play here at the United Nations as countries, as governments amongst each other. So yes, we need this paradigm change. And I know it's sometimes difficult because governments are not always used to doing things other than they have done so for the last 75 years, but they should. And I always take the example of 1972, if I can quote a little bit more history, when Carter and Brezhnev got together to sign a whole nuclear disarmament agreement. Then I know that as governments, we can also get together in a multi-stakeholder approach with business, with CSOs, with youth, with the people that matter, that shape this digital world together with us, and make sure that this is a world that leaves no one behind, and that is a world that the roadmap aims for. And as it comes to the Netherlands, there are two things that I would like to highlight, in particular when it comes to the roadmap. First of all, as a co-champion on digital trust and security. Now, I think digital trust and security is the key word when it comes to this multi-stakeholder approach, because the trust in certain aspects is still lacking. From our part, we've, as you know, been involved in the creation of the so-called Global Forum on Cyber Expertise, which is one of the most foremost public-private cyber capacity building platforms. Again, something we need in order to implement this roadmap. Second of all, we're a key constituent on digital inclusion, and that is, of course, a wonderful phrase. It also always sounds wonderful, but so far we've also seen the digital divide, I think, a little bit more pronounced than digital inclusion, and we've seen it actually amplifying social, cultural, economic inequalities. And that is something we do need to address urgently if we are not to leave anyone behind. We need to not just focus on helping people to consume existing technologies, we need to help them to also develop digital technologies themselves. And this leads me also to the question to the panelists, because so often we speak about the internet as if it's this wonderful, big global community. But of course, it is also uniquely local. For instance, in the Netherlands, we don't have eBay. We have a very particular Dutch trading platform. And I know this goes also for so many other countries. So how can we, in this global concept of this roadmap, also ensure together that we do take into account these local necessities and make sure that people locally are able to build capacity instead of just consuming technology? Thank you, Yuping.
Thank you, Ambassador. And for the sake of the panelists, we're actually going to take about 4 interventions. I'll turn it back to you. So if you've taken note of Ambassador Zellenrad's question, you'll have a chance to come back to that later. Our next speaker is Ambassador Silvio Gonzato, Deputy Permanent Representative of the European Union Delegation to the United Nations here in New York. Ambassador Gonzato, please.
Thank you, Yuping, and I'll be brief because I want to leave enough space for others to take the floor. But let me first of all say how much we appreciate the efforts of the office and of Maria-Francesca to make the work you're doing more visible and more transparent. In that respect, the report that you prepared ahead of the General Assembly event and the fact that you also have a website now providing information, detailed information on the activities of the office and the implementation of the roadmap is something that we as European Union and member states appreciate very, very much. And as Maria-Francesca was saying, we need to keep the momentum after this event at the General Assembly. But let me stress one point that is very important for us. We need to ensure there is also cross-sectoral exchange between the different strands of work under the digital roadmap. And we would very much welcome the opportunity to, provide opportunities to build bridges between the different strands of work and to ensure that we don't work in silos. We say this because, as you know, we were champion for the human rights strand, and we think that something that should pervade all different strands of work. Regarding the digital divide and leaving no one behind, I think we all agreed about it. Our digital policy puts the human being, its rights and freedoms at the heart. And therefore, digital divide is something that we need to overcome. It's a new form of social exclusions that has become particularly dramatic with COVID-19. But, and we are committed to stepping up our investment in digital connectivity, the new generation of development cooperation programs that the EU has launched as an important focus on digital, particularly also in our cooperation with the African countries, and it looks not just about at infrastructure, but it looks also at developing digital skills and overcoming the gender gap, which is particularly preoccupying. But let me also say that this digitalization process has to be carefully managed. We have to ensure, for example, as Mark was saying, that human rights apply both online as they apply offline. So we need to update the way in which these the digital world operates. We have to also be vigilant against hate speech. We have to be vigilant against child abuse, for example. So we really need to establish a very close link between human rights and the digital world. There is a clear need for governance, but we think that the model for, as Mark was also saying, the model that should inspire us is a multi-stakeholder model. And I think listening to Nnenna, you really see the importance of civil society in that respect. We want to build an internet which is safe, which is inclusive, which is free, and that's super important, and is open. And a multi-stakeholder partnership in this respect is the only way forward. And last but not least, I would not be a representative of the European Union if I didn't talk about also the green transition. And we think that the green transition and the digital transition should work, should go in parallel and work hand in hand. I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think with you as a champion on human rights, Ambassador Zellerant and the Netherlands on trust and security, and then our next speaker, Ambassador Jarmo on artificial intelligence, we do indeed have that cross-fertilization. So with that, can I turn to Ambassador Jarmo Sareva, Ambassador for Innovation, the Government of Finland. Ambassador Jarmo, please.
Thank you so much, Yuping, and good evening from Helsinki, Finland. Two previous speakers have already stressed a number of really important issues around the follow-up to the not only the high-level panel's report, but to the roadmap for digital cooperation. And Yuping, I just want to thank you and the rest of the team for the great work that you have done, including the recent reports that you put together before last week's high-level dialogue. Now, you mentioned that Finland is a champion on AI, and AI is one of our priorities in the follow-up to the roadmap. The other two being inclusion and digital public goods. But this doesn't mean that we would overlook all the other aspects of the roadmap, because it's a whole, and we need to continue to see it as a whole. Now, let me make just a few points here. SDGs. There's a realization that we will definitely be unable to reach the SDGs without digital cooperation. And let's keep both words, digital and cooperation, in mind. Digital alone is not going to do the trick. We need to bear in mind the need for social innovation and the need for policy tools. But at the same time, digital is going to be indispensable if we are going to reach the SDGs, the goal of which is due to COVID escaping us. And the thing that I also want to stress is inclusion, because as in so many other areas of life, without being inclusive and without respect for diversity, we will fail. And let's bear in mind that those organizations, be they public or private sector organizations, which are diverse and which are inclusive, they will succeed. But those which are not inclusive will fail. And that fate will await us in the digital realm if we are to exclude people, countries, sectors. And this brings me to my next point, which is something really in the DNA of Finland's foreign policy, and that is gender equality. And as we have seen during the pandemic, the gender digital divide has unfortunately widened in all countries, but perhaps nowhere as much as in the developing world. So this is my question to the panelists. How can we ensure that we can get back on track, bridging the gender digital divide? What are the tools in doing so? And how can we also ensure that there is enough funding going to this, including from the private sector? Because we know well, all too well, that the public sources of funding will not suffice. We need a private funding to help bridge the gender digital divide and other digital divides as well. So with those words, I thank you again and look forward to continued discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Sarajeva. Our last speaker before we turn back to the panelists is Ms. Ellen Blecker, who is the Vice President for Global Public Policy at the Walt Disney Company, who's speaking on behalf of the United States Council for International Business, part of the multi-stakeholder approach that I think many have emphasized here today. Ellen?
Hi. Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody. Good to see some familiar faces. I am speaking on behalf of the U.S. Council for International Business, an industry association composed of 300 members from major U.S. businesses. USCIB has been an enthusiastic participant, even a cheerleader for the IGF for the past 15 years, and is committed to the roadmap and its timely implementation. We join others today in recognizing the importance of a multi-stakeholder framework for the consideration of digital policy issues. Given the dynamic nature of digital transformation, it continues to be the best method to enable whole of society solutions which avoid unintended consequences and are grounded in democratic values, transparency, accountability, and consensus. USCIB is pleased with the steps taken to advance our recommendation to professionalize the IGF fundraising function. A larger and more sustainable budget is needed for the IGF to realize its full potential and take on the enhanced role envisioned by the roadmap. We'd like to see a broadened pool of donors and a more accessible and transparent mechanisms to enable contributions of any size. Business continues to believe that the IGF Plus model will best foster global digital cooperation. We look forward to information about how the Plus model will be realized. We note efforts already underway to make this year's meeting more focused and to introduce new ways of producing actionable outcomes via the policy networks on environment and meaningful access, both critical issues that others have talked about today. Regarding the creation of a multi-stakeholder high-level body, our view is that should be an additional layer within the MAG, an executive committee of sorts, tasked with facilitating cooperation and coordination across the UN and multilateral orgs. Perhaps most important, the stakeholder community should be able to hold the high-level body accountable to the agreed-upon charters and rules of engagement with the other organizations. In this spirit, we concur with others who've talked today and urge that the community be able to provide input on the structure and functions of the new body once UNDESA and the Tech Envoy's office have developed the proposal. Thank you for the chance to talk today.
Thank you so much, Ellen. So we will now return to our panel to hear if they have any comments, responses to some of the questions that were specifically raised. For instance, perhaps Doreen, this question that was raised by Ambassador Jarmo on gender and the digital divide. Doreen?
Yes, thank you, Yuping, and thanks to Ambassador Jarmo for that great question. Because indeed, the growing digital gender gap is something that is quite concerning, and we see that divide. It's not a simple access to technology divide; it's use of technology, and it's also representation of women in the technology sector, and they're all linked to each other. And so when we think about the access piece, we need to remember that some of the barriers around women and girls accessing technology have to do with safety concerns. They're afraid, online violence, harassment, bullying. Sometimes it's a content issue. Maybe the content's not relevant, not in languages. That's also an issue. The cost is another issue. So we got to tackle that affordability issue. And then when it comes to skills, we need to have more of a focus on building and supporting women and girls to get the needed digital literacy, that basic digital literacy. And of course, in terms of women in the technology sector, we have our Girls in ICT Day that we just celebrated 2 weeks ago. We have to find ways to expose opportunities for young girls in the tech sector, because the numbers are quite alarming, I would say. There are some great efforts out there. We have our Equals Global Partnership, and we also have the Generation Equality Initiative that UN Women is also championing in this space. Back to you, Yuping. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doreen. Maybe I could ask ASG Spatolisano if she'd like to comment on any of the questions raised, and then after that, I'll go to Nnenna and Vint. ASG?
Yes, I wanted to say how much I agree with Doreen that the question of gender is at the confluence of several strands of work, and it has to do with skills and education, but also, as she rightly pointed out, the content and the risks, and so I agree entirely with what you said, Doreen. In terms of building capacities and not just becoming or remaining consumers of technology, I think it's a very well put point. We all, in one way or another, are passive users, but of course we need to build generations and generations of people who are more than that, so that they can be active in shaping the means, the tool that they use. And of course, this has to do with capacity building, which is part of a very important part of what we do. We have lots of programs in the UN, of course, in general, and the Tech Envoy office is part of it. And we are very concerned, of course, not to leave behind any minority or other groups which could be marginalized. So I really think that between the various components of the UN environment, we will be able to address that. And I thank you for having put it so clearly in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, ASG. Vint and Nnenna?
Well, thank you so much. Gosh, there are so many things to comment on and no time to do it. Let me just re-emphasize something that was mentioned earlier about trust and the value of it. If we can't trust each other, it will be very hard to cooperate. So we are going to have to build means by which the various organizations and institutions that are working on digital cooperation can trust each other. And some of that will be technology, but some of it will be transparency and accountability. And I think we will all need to work on that. I've taken lots of notes here. The second thing which I resonated with strongly, of course, is the gender equality question. And I would point out that one of the biggest problems is not simply enticing women and girls to get interested in technology, but to make sure that the institutions in which they are involved recognize the importance of protecting that interest and protecting them from what I will call harmful behaviors by especially hormone-filled males in their teenage years. A second thing, though, that is related has to do with accessibility in the sense of helping people with disabilities to get access to and making use of these digital technologies. Theoretically, we should be able to make these systems accommodate the needs of people with disabilities, and yet we have not done well in that space. And this is another gap that absolutely needs attention, as do many of the other gaps that we've mentioned. The last thing I'd like to say is that Ellen Blackler's comments are very well taken, with which I and Google resonate, particularly the professionalization of fundraising for the IGF. I can argue and say that I've been a consistent corporate sponsor of IGF, but we all could use some more help making sure that IGF has the resources it needs to execute the IGF Plus agenda. So thank you very much for the opportunity to reinforce some of these comments.
Thank you, Vint. Nnenna?
Thank you very much. 428 billion is the researched amount that we've been given by ITUA for AI for connecting the whole world by 2030. But I want to say that cash alone does not cut it. A digital divide is only a part of the global divide. Inequalities exist everywhere. And so we cannot just work on closing the digital divide without working on global social justice. That's my first point. My second point has been raised by a lot of other people, and that is responsibility. Like Tim Berners-Lee says, we have enjoyed the digital world. It is high time we all became responsible. So UN responsibility, government responsibility, industry responsibility, and user responsibility. And that's why if you followed the process of the roadmap, the contract for the web has been consistent in calling for responsibility of all stakeholders. Finally, because I'm here as an African woman from the civil society, I must put it to everyone watching, and those who will watch later, and those who will watch even after I die, that we cannot spend all of this energy connecting people and then disconnect the connected. Did you get that? We cannot be putting in money, global resources to connect human beings, and then for some crazy reason, somebody in government will go behind parliament and disconnect individuals. We must speak about it. Trust and security. If we don't trust you, we can't go anywhere, like Vint says. We need to trust the digital corporation, and that goes by keeping internet connection real, on and uninterrupted. We cannot connect and disconnect. Thank you.
Thank you, Nnenna. I'm going to ask that all speakers in the next round, plus the panelists, try and keep their comments as short and focused as possible so that we can see if we can give as many people the floor as possible. The next speaker I have is Mr. Robert Ott, the Chief Digital Officer from the United Nations Development Program. Rob, please.
Thanks, Yuping, and greetings to everyone. You know, at UNDP, we're certainly a central part of the roadmap. We're co-leading the area of digital capacity development with ITU and the new Coalition for Digital Environmental Sustainability with UNEP, the German Environment Agency, Future Earth, and others. And we're participating in lots of the other roundtables as well. And from our perspective, as Francesca said at the very beginning of this meeting, I think we are at this inflection point where the roadmap is more relevant and urgent now than I think even when it was first created. Certainly from the onset of COVID, we've seen this massive surge from our partners in requests for support on how to implement digital to not only address the COVID pandemic, but build on that and move into a new era. And so we believe that there's a major opportunity to work together to promote a global vision of inclusive digital societies. And that's one that is taking a whole of society approach rather than a fragmented or only sectoral approach. It's one that recognizes that digital is not inherently neutral, that we need to be intentionally inclusive to leave no one behind, and the people with disabilities that were just discussed, gender divide, etc. We need to look at the challenges that digital brings around data privacy, misinformation, and how technology is used ethically. And we need to have global scale, but what responses that are rooted in local ecosystems. And so my question is a little bit similar to our colleague from the Netherlands, and I didn't hear it addressed by the panel too explicitly. So the question is, in our race for massive scale, we know that there needs to be locally tuned, locally tailored solutions. But how can we get there in some sort of economically feasible way that recognizes the individuality of local ecosystems, language issues, just particular contextual elements. But where do we find the scale from? So let me leave it there, Yuping. Thanks again, and thanks for the panel for a really great discussion.
Thank you, Rob. Let's turn now to Ms. Lucy Harris from the Digital Public Goods Alliance. Lucy, please.
Hi, and thank you so much to everyone who's shared comments here today, and especially to Yuping and the Office of the Tech Envoy. We're delighted to have the opportunity to work so closely with you on recommendation 1B of the roadmap. I will definitely keep it short here. I'm representing the Digital Public Goods Alliance, a joint initiative of UNICEF, the government of Norway, the government of Sierra Leone, and the think tank iSpirit. And we're focused on advancing digital public goods. So really on figuring out how to harness the potential of open solutions that let anyone adopt and adapt technology to their local needs. And we see this as a very powerful tool for creating trust and accessibility, things that have been brought up here. So my question, I would love to know what you see as some of the biggest challenges that would especially benefit from greater access to digital solutions that are open and transparent. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Next, we have Tomika Tillerman from the New America Foundation. Tomika, please.
Thank you so much, and congratulations to Yuping and her team for their amazing work advancing the roadmap. I'd like to build on Lucy's excellent comments on digital public goods. What we see looking historically is that virtually every major innovation in human history must be accompanied by investment in infrastructure and regulation if it's going to achieve its full potential. This was true of aviation and automobiles in the 20th century. It's certainly proving true of digital technology today. And without an investment in digital public goods, we will be unable to realize the full benefits that these tools could provide to an ever-growing number of people who desperately need access to digital technology. There is clearly a market failure in this space, and existing structures and institutions have failed to fill the gap required for investment in digital public goods. We have been fortunate to work with a number of collaborator organizations, including many represented on this call, to create a contact group around financing investment in digital public goods. But I'd be very grateful for insights from the panel on what they see as the most promising solutions for creating a marketplace that can support and foster investment in open source digital public goods.
Thank you, Tomika. Next, we have Peter Misek, General Counsel and UN Policy Manager from Access Now. Peter?
Thank you, Yuping, and it's great to see everyone here. I really want to, first of all, say this energy is so important. The last time I remember this much enthusiasm for connecting the world was around the launch of the SDGs. And I think that work that we did together to connect the world by 2020 was prescient, right? But also, of course, incomplete and sadly and fatally so, given the nature of this pandemic and our reliance on digital systems. So the internet worked. I think we're over dependent on an under-distributed resource right now. And I say over dependent because we see these health responses, these new systems and programs and initiatives around vaccine passports and restrictions being levied based on people's health status. Being instituted at a global scale with often the promotion and encouragement of the private sector and major governments onto a world that's not ready for that. And we are very concerned that personal privacy and security is being a bit overrun in this pandemic response, and that these crisis response measures are becoming permanent policy. And so we just want to ensure that the attention to long-lasting, high-quality, sustainable, consistent internet access is redoubled, but that is not a crisis response. That is that should be permanent policy in order to reach the SDGs, and that this access is not conditioned on some sort of health status. We can't reach the SDGs without consistent high quality access to the internet that's affordable and that's not shut down, as Nnenna said. And Access Now is proud to partner with OHCHR and others on aspects of the roadmap. The human rights due diligence is one piece that I want to pull out, especially that is really going to aid the UN across its agencies in ensuring respect for digital rights. And we also want to put out another bid for increased attention to the right to privacy in the digital age. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Peter. In the interest of keeping the energy high, can I ask the panelists to really try and respond very quickly in 2 or 3 sentences? Then we're going to try and fit in another round of comments from the participants. Panelists, please, feel free to unmute yourself. Maybe we'll start off with Nnenna and reverse the order.
Right, thank you. I wanted to come back to the gender one. I think last week we had the PGA's high-level event on connectivity, and if I quote Deputy SG Amina Mohammad very well, she said the digital divide is the new face of inequality. And that's one message I want to reinforce here. I heard someone talk about taking to the very rural areas. And I think that while we have a global response, we also need to nationalize it, sub-nationalize it, and localize it. I think that A4AI and some other partners have put forward community-owned networks because it's not everywhere that is viable for business, and that is where we're looking forward to government investment. So 428 billion, once again, is the amount, but we need to tailor it to people at the last mile, and sometimes community-owned networks are going to be some solutions that we might want to explore. Thank you.
Thank you, Nnenna. Vint?
So there are many things to respond to. Let me suggest, first of all, with regard to digital public goods and digital public facilities and support, there are a number of different business models that are feasible. In some cases, the private sector can undertake to maintain these things. For example, GitHub was acquired by Microsoft, if I'm remembering correctly, and that provides support. In the case of the Android operating system, Google supports that, but it's a very openly available piece of software. Another example of this is the Internet Society, which acquired the operation of the .org top-level domain, which sustains its operation, sustains the Internet Engineering Task Force as a standards-making operation. So I believe there is a lot of creative opportunity here for designing and building business models that will support open and accessible digital goods. If I could just steal another 30 seconds, I'm very concerned about the term data sovereignty, because what's happening is that we're trying to force a kind of Westphalian model on a global internet, which is very dependent on the ability to move information smoothly and easily on a global scale. If we're not careful, we will create a fragmented internet, which does not serve anyone's interest, and so another thing to be worried about.
Thank you, Vint. ASG, then Doreen.
There, I am unmuted, I think. Yes. Let me start where Cerf left. The fragmented internet indeed would not be in the interest of anyone. And the internet itself is a very complex world, of course, but it is important that the basic principles, and I go back to something which was said initially about the human rights and upholding the values. The basic principles on which an international community operates apply online and offline in an equal manner. And while we operate indeed in a new world through this internet possibilities, we still have to maintain our, pledge to those values, because people are what matters. The internet has to serve the people and not the other way around. And therefore, we want freedom of expression, ability to participate in local communities, and all these opportunities to exist also in the cyberspace and not be hampered by regulation. Now, regulation might be necessary, not maybe a lot of regulation, but some regulation to translate some of these principles in a more clear way in the online space. But that is not the purpose. The purpose is to reaffirm the values that we all hold dear. And I think that cannot be left to the tech companies alone. So that's why we talk about the multi-stakeholder cooperative effort in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, ASG. Doreen?
Yeah, thanks, Yuping. I'll try to be brief. I mean, I want to pick up on Robert's point, because I do think we have this incredible opportunity, and it's only going to work if we have that political will there at the top, and then we have that community buy-in. And Robert, you asked, you know, sort of the how on the ground, and I think it's about a whole of government approach, a whole of society approach. I would argue a whole of UN approach. Let's not compete, let's come together, and sort of this whole of the ICT ecosystem. And if we can bring all those pieces together and we get those community leaders engaged, it can work. And I have one great example, which is our smart villages in Niger, where we're working with lots of UN agencies, and it's very concrete, specific applications, locally tailored, and it's successful. Thank you.
Because I really want to give everybody the floor. This is going to be lightning round, where those who would like to speak, I would really ask you one sentence, and then we'll turn to the panelists for sort of very quick responses. Mr. Salim Avan, Director of Policy Strategy and Governance Division in OICT. Salim?
Thank you, Yuping. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I'll be very, very brief. Actually, I was just about to send you a message saying that I have to leave, but just as you called my name. So, you know, we talked about a great many things. The kind of whole issue is very, very multifaceted, very complicated. But so I won't go into all of those aspects. The one thing that we really have been working on is we kind of think of technology and data as a kind of universal language, particularly a language that younger people understand and can engage on and communicate on. And we also kind of really think that the kind of principles of open source, as others have mentioned, are very powerful. And they've been very powerful driving force in bringing us to where we are. So we've been working on things like crowdsourcing. We're working on an open source program office. We've been trying to bring this kind of energy together. So really the comment and the question is, if we talk about being inclusive, overcoming the digital divide, the gender digital divide, and trying to co-create, then is there a way for us to really engage that kind of culture and that spirit of open source that really started in the technology industry? And how do we do that in the context of this work that we've been talking about? So that's the kind of very brief version of my intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Salim. Elisabetta Zuanelli, Professor of Digital Communication at the University of Rome. Elisabetta?
Thank you. Thank you, Yuping. Briefly, I'm astonished at the fact that this fantastic panel proposes a number of themes about which we are not really in full agreement. Let me say one thing. I believe we have a sort of asymmetric view of the digital divide having to do with the fact that connectivity is the solution for having an access to internet. But of course, it is the solution to have an access as consumers. The other side of the moon has to do with the fact we should, throughout the world, develop participation in the development of new technologies. And this has to do with business, of course. A second quick consideration has to do with a theme that we have not touched today, and has to do with safe, secure, and trustworthy technologies. In particular, I am concerned with artificial intelligence cybersecurity, and I would propose to the attention of the panel two considerations. First of all, as we have seen in the COVID context, attacks have multiplied, even though there were so much in critical infrastructures throughout the world. So how would it be possible to have a sort of diplomacy, cyber diplomacy initiatives on one side in order to fight against the cyber criminal economy and the prevention of cyber warfare? We are in a full cyber warfare. So if we want to have a cooperation, it should go also in this direction. And third and last consideration, when we apply to human rights, we should, and impacts on human rights of digital transformation, we should take into consideration the fact that ethical and economic choices are neither neutral nor universal. So this kind of proliferation of approaches that should be merged by this fantastic work that's been done so far is one of the proposals I put forward.
Thank you, Elizabeth. From the Russian Federation, Boris Meshchanov. Boris?
Thank you very much, distinguished moderator, distinguished ASG. Thanks very much for giving us the opportunity to speak. We're speaking much about multi-stakeholder approach, but we haven't yet raised to an extent needed the issue of leadership of member states themselves and the government leadership in this process. In our vision, we have to admit that the roadmap by the Secretary General touches upon a multitude of issues, including security, human rights, and others. A number of concepts that appeared are unclear and did not receive full support by member states. The technical applicability of others also raises questions. In addition, there are specialized bodies in fora that already successfully did with parts of the suggested agenda. That relates in particular to the issue of security in the use of information communication technologies. Even more importantly, the roadmap has not been properly discussed or approved by member states and thus has no mandate. The UN, as an intergovernmental member states-driven organization, clearly lacks the mandate for any implementation of the document or any of its chapters. That's a matter of serious concern for us. We reiterate that the elaboration of a UN strategic vision for engagement in this crucial field cannot bypass a formal intergovernmental process. It must be based on consensus approaches, such as an endeavor should proceed from common understanding of roles with diverse actors based on their responsibilities and capacities. And successful multi-stakeholder effort, which first need a solid consensual intergovernmental base setting terms of reference, definition, and principles. We feel that there is room for further work here. We'd be grateful if officer in charge for the Office of the Secretary General of Technology Envoy could address our concerns. And I thank you once again.
Thank you, Boris. Next, last two speakers, can we go through them in like really one line? Virginia Dignam from the Umeå University. Virginia, please.
Thank you very much. I don't think my video is working, but in sake of time, let's continue. I hope you can hear me. Leaving no one behind is also looking at those who rush ahead in front. It's making sure that those who rush ahead in front are motivated not only by economic benefits. And if we talked before about paradigm shift, and I would like to propose yet another paradigm shift. We are not in a race. We are not in a competition against each other. I would like to see the developments in the digital, in artificial intelligence, which is my field, much more as an exploration which enables the different alternatives and puts humans in the center. For that, I think that we really have to look at those governance, regulatory or standard measures that can support innovation, that can be seen as a stepping stone for innovation, which creates a level play field for all and facilitates a diversity and inclusion perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. And lastly, Chenny Shi from the Ant Group, Head of Communications for the Americas. Chenny?
Hi, thanks, Yuping. Thanks for keeping this going at a furious clip, and I'll try to keep this short. So we'd just like to underscore our commitment to digital financing to support the UN SDGs on behalf of our CEO, Eric Jing of Ant Group, who were part of the Alibaba ecosystem, and Eric and Ant were part of the Digital Financing Task Force as a representative from the private sector from China. And I think listening to everyone here, just like to share a little bit about work in gender and digital financial inclusion for women in developing areas through our My Bank loans. So through our microcredit arm, My Bank, we've actually given out half of our loan recipients are female entrepreneurs, and we actually train them in emerging technologies in AI and cloud service. And I know some people also mentioned that as well. So we find that to be a solid case for us. Sorry, I feel like I'm being rushed, but yeah, we look forward to working closely with the UN ecosystem to further advancing the SDGs. And I want to just echo all of the other comments on highlighting gender balance and narrowing the digital divide, which is very important for us. And if I had a question, it'd be for Doreen from the ITU in terms of the sense of urgency in the next steps that you kind of highlighted. If you had to prioritize, what is the most urgent issue in your mind?
Thank you so much, Jenny. And then this is where we are going to wrap up. And I thank everybody for the patience for staying with us in such an engaging conversation. Next time around, we'll budget 1.5 hours. Vint had to drop off. So I think here we will just turn to our panel for closing remarks, as well as responses to the questions that they just raised. And then that will be the last word from everybody. So perhaps here we start with Nnenna, Doreen, and then we'll end with the ASG. Nnenna, please.
The internet is going to work with or without your country. So it's a truth facet. So the earlier we collaborate and cooperate as digital cooperation at the global level, the better for us. You can resist an army of 1,000 people, but an idea whose time has come, you cannot. So let's begin today. If you have any issues, put them on the table and we will discuss it. We have not reached equal footing. But this time around, this is the digital world. The UN did not create the internet, and the internet has worked without the UN. So please join. Thank you.
Thank you, Nnenna. Doreen?
Yeah, thank you. So I'll pick up on Chenny's question on the sort of urgency and what would I prioritize. I'd like to say all of the above. But I guess the most important thing is for countries to put digital at the top of their national agenda. That's what I think needs to be prioritized. Put it up there in the top of the national agenda. And just to close off, in this final decade for action, connecting the world has never been so important, as we've heard from all of the panelists today. And really that multi-stakeholder collaboration is going to be key to our success. Thank you. Back over to you.
Thank you, Doreen, and ASG for your closing remarks and words of wisdom.
Well, I wish I had that much of a wisdom, but let me say, first of all, thank you to you Ping, for this very good moderation and fast pace. You impressed a real exchange. Second, I would like to address indeed the comments by the Russian Federation. It is indeed not the purpose to impose anything on anyone. On the contrary, the purpose of the Office of Tech Envoy is to be an entry point for everyone. And I am pleased to say that this is working quite well. We are open. We are your entry point to this conversation in the UN. So I'm sure we will continue that conversation together. And finally, I have to say that what Nnenna said, I wish I had said it, because indeed the world goes on with or without us. So we better be part of it and be together in doing, our best to give the values I was talking about the best place in this new world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, again, for staying with us through the whole event. And thank you for your engagement with our office. And we really look forward to continuing this. Thank you so much. And to our wonderful panelists for being with us today and everybody here. Goodbye and thank you.
Thanks, Yuping.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.